association with Speedhire. I'm Sukriti Yaduvanshi, your host for this session. Speedhire is a technically advanced AI-powered assessment suite to build winning technology teams for your organization. It comes with advanced features and capability to assess developers in 54 coding languages. In its previous avatar, Code Judge, the platform has assisted 10 million assessments and 1,000 plus customers till date. So before we move ahead, to discuss the process of technical assessment and hiring across organizations with our esteemed panelists, let us have a look at how Speedhire can help you build technical resources who just don't fit in but stand out.
Is this how you build your team? In today's world, talent fuels business, and it comes as no wonder that a lot lies on the recruitment process, which is why it is pivotal for hiring to be made on well informed decisions based on skill and expertise. Essentially, unbiased, well researched, and fast because, well, time is money. However, this process could be enormously taxing, not to mention lengthy, taking up days and even months. You can now say goodbye to all your hiring woes with Speed Hire, a smart, savvy, and swift way to assess talent for your organization. Assess faster, better, together. All talent acquisition needs taken care of in just one click. Here's a truly dynamic AI powered comprehensive assessment platform to make your hiring process smoother. Speedhire merges the potency of three powerful platforms into one. Speedhire assesses candidates with AI powered platform. Speedhire Live conduct remote interviews, even code tests. Speedhire Advanced role based assessment simplified. Speedhire assess multiple candidates across geographies with just a click. Automated assessment of multiple coding assignments in one go. Saves time and effort. Improve hiring ROI. Unbiased hiring. Build winning technology teams with unbiased insights, not instincts. Speedhire is based on artificial intelligence, offers assessment in 54 languages, vast library of 15,000 plus tech questions for assessment. Speedhire Live. Assess tech skills in real-time coding environment. Inbuilt developer-friendly code editor. Works with Google Calendar to notify the recruiters and candidates about relevant dates. Online chat feature to connect the interviewer and interviewee. Speedhire Advanced. Role-based assessment. Simplify your talent search for various roles. 4 defined roles. Just pick the role that you are seeking. Advanced algorithm will help you find the right candidate from your own database and remove those who don't fit your hiring criterion. Revolutionize your hiring process. Start your free trial today. Visit our social media handles or connect with us on marketing@speedhire.com and corporate care@speedhire.com.
So just as we saw this, how Speedhire is revolutionizing the entire technical assessment and hiring process. So technical hiring is all about building great teams to develop great products and services. In the new normal, remote talent assessment has become a major way to scout skilled talent, especially for the tech roles where the tech quotient defines the success or doom of a project. Each role has its own unique set required skill sets, and different levels of seniority have entirely different sets of requirements. Those distinctions, paired with constantly changing technologies, makes it challenging to nail down the repeatable, sustainable hiring process. But how do organizations ensure to recruit the right tech talent? How do HR leaders work on the strategies and processes for technical assessment and hiring? All this and much more will be over the table while our esteemed panelists from the HR and tech fraternity talk and share their valuable insights today. Stella Binu Joshua, head HR from Uber, could not join us for the discussion today due to some technical exigency, but she will be a part of our upcoming sessions definitely. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Murali Malla, Director, Talent Acquisitions, Qualcomm India Private Limited; Sudev Das, Director, Global Talent Acquisition, APAC, Unisys; Pritesh Balakrishnan, Senior Vice President and Delivery Head, Digital Engineering Services and GIS CSS Corp; Jagadji Turuk, Head of Product, Tegic and Speedhire from Times Internet Limited. Thank you for being a part of this. I look forward to a power-packed discussion and hope that we draw some great insights from our esteemed panelists. As we speak, we are live on Speedhire and Techie pages of Facebook and YouTube. Without taking much time, I would request my panel to say a quick hello to the audience and share their opening remarks. Murli, can we start from you? You're on mute.
Yeah, hi, this is
Please.
Murli. I'm part of the Qualcomm talent acquisition team. I currently lead the efforts for Qualcomm India hiring, and I've been with Qualcomm for about close to 9 years. And I have overall experience of about 15, 16 years in tech hiring, been with associated with companies like SAP and then now with Qualcomm. These are the two companies that I've been associated with. And been an end-to-end recruiter from day one. And I think I've seen through a lot of changes in the assessment space. And hence, I thought it'd be a good opportunity for coming to talk about it and learn more from the panel that is available here. So that's the reason for my joining this forum, and look forward to a fruitful discussion. That's pretty much about me. Thank you.
Thank you, Murli. Sudev?
Hi, thanks, Sukriti. It's a pleasure to be here amongst panelists and learn from them. My name is Sudev Das. I basically lead talent acquisition for Unisys across Asia Pacific. I have been in the recruiting field for the longest time ever. I have been with a couple of product companies. I've done 2 startups of my own in the recruiting space, and it's been about a year since I've been with Unisys, but I think that I've seen significant amount of changes over the last so many years in talent acquisition to a context where we are right now, talking about AI and assessments and tech assessments. It's been a pretty interesting journey. Happy to be a part of the discussion.
Thank you so much. Brijesh?
I'm Brijesh, and I have 2 completely different roles. So on one side, I'm a software engineer by profession. Start of my profession, I was at Infosys for about 2 decades, 22 years to be precise. I used to head the high-tech and manufacturing industry at Infosys. And then I joined CSS about a year and a half back. So here I head the digital unit and also the geospatial unit. Those are the 2 P&L units that I manage. But along with that, I also have department responsibility, which is for the global talent acquisition. It was quite interesting for as engineer and a digital unit person to handle recruitment. But then the way that I looked at it was everyone talks about digitization, and I think the HR and recruitment and those kind of very tightly coupled departments are the ones that are slightly behind for their own reasons in adopting technology and moving on. So I thought that would be a good opportunity to bring on the whole digital power in driving the changes in acquisition, talent management, and all of that. So that's what I'm trying to currently do for the company, and it's a pretty interesting journey, and I'm happy to be exploring this part of the world as well.
Thank you so much. Jagadjit?
Thanks, Sukriti. So I'm Jagat.
Hi.
I have been with TechGig for 5 years now in the product roles, helping companies build winning tech teams. So I have worked with a lot of companies and helping them out in building winning teams. Before this, I had a couple of startups of my own, some in the e-com domain, couple of consulting startups. I have a total experience of about 12 years now. I'm excited to be a part of this panel, and I look forward to a fruitful discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. Now let's get the dice rolling for our final panel discussion. So my first question for today is, what is the regular process of recruiting a tech talent in your organization? And what are the changes in recruitment practices that you've observed? So can I quickly have, Sudev answer this for me, and then we'd move to the other panelists?
Sure. So I think the change that we've seen over the last couple of months due to COVID has been a significant amount of automation and digitization. I think fundamentally the decision-making process, which you would not move before meeting a candidate face to face and being able to assess, etc., etc. So to say, the feel the candidate, as they said, beyond just the tech assessment. I think that has changed, and it's transitioned to whether it is a Zoom or whatever tool you want to use. But I think it's all become online and video. It poses its own challenges, but I think that's what has happened from a perspective, and even within Unisys, where we were doing and we were taking decisions, and we wouldn't move without a face-to-face meeting. I think all that has changed significantly. There's a significant shift in terms of it's not just about the skill, but I think the realization has come about over the last couple of months. It's more. It's about the person too. So yes, tech assessment, assessing the skill, evaluating it is critical, but I think it's also about the person who comes on board from a perspective. So I think those are some of the things that we've done over the last couple of months, and have seen some of these changes taking shape as we move forward.
Amazing. Murli, what about Qualcomm? What are you practicing right now?
So I think we are one of those companies. We have two different distinct hiring patterns that normally happens. One is hardcore hardware engineering, where you cannot do a tech assessment for them in the system. And the next is more technical software, embedded programming. For that, we used to do tech assessments even before. But what changed post-COVID though was we never used to hire anybody without meeting. And it used to be a conversation that I have been in several meetings when there will be conversations saying, I met him only once, can I get him to see one more time to get a little more comfort on the candidate? He wrote the program okay, but I don't know how good it will be for long term. Say, can he work on different areas? I want to test him again. I want to meet him again. So those things are now completely gone outside the scope, right? I'm saying today you're in a position to make a call based on how people do online assessments and probably telephonic conversation. You need to make some decisions based on that. It was not a difficult journey though, because we used to do this similar one for entry-level talent. So now it's been expanded to other levels. So that's the kind of the scenario that we're seeing. We have been using tools and techniques to do these assessments over the years, but now it is more widely used, and we are now figuring out a way to assess hardware tech talent also online. So that's where we're heading at this point of time.
Wonderful. Vijesh, belonging to both HR as well as the tech background, what do you have to share with us?
So I'm always reminded of this cartoon that came up in early April. It said, who's the most responsible person for bringing in a digital transformation to the company? And it had choice of a CEO, a CIO, a CTO, and the fourth option was COVID. And the truth is that COVID was the one. It's quite unfortunate that COVID is a reason, but actually the amount of transformation that has happened, the digital transformation, we've had transformations in a lot of domains. So if you really look at it, and India was in the forefront of a lot of it. In fact, today's Prime Minister's speech, I don't know how many watched it. He was doing the Bangalore Tech Summit inauguration, and he was talking about how India can take the digital lead. In a lot of industries, if you see, banking for that matter, so banking, the whole digitization of banking, ICICI and HDFC and all that revolutionized it. That started about 20 years back. Insurance started, a lot of other retail started, right? The Amazons of the world and all of that. It was all through digital transformations that really happened. And then, as I started in the beginning, there were certain domains like a legal domain or an HR domain, a talent acquisition domain. All of them were considered too sacred and too sensitive, and to get into a tech background or a completely 100% tech led process. Mainly because there was, I think Murli or Sudev was talking about that you actually had to at least see the person once. So there was this whole credibility, the whole trust factor coming into it, because it's a potential hire. You don't really know that person, so unless you see that person, how could you even make a decision? And we believe that there could be a lot of uh, faking that happens if the real physical evaluations are not done. Now, and it's not that these technologies are new. These technologies existed for the last 10 years, for that matter. They were used by different other industries and domains. But a hiring kind of area, we always said, no, no, we'll stay away far from this, because it's not worth doing that effort. The risks involved are very high. But then the lockdown for the first time, I don't know, in all of our generation, and that's the biggest thing for us to realize, that it's not just a country lockdown that happened, it's a global lockdown. And these are things that have never happened. Of course, this is the first time that our generation saw this. So when there's a global one, there's a global acceptance, because we all today work in a completely flat world. So decisions are not taken just for one country. There has to be a equal sink in from the US counterparts and from the Europe and all of that. And everyone are empathizing about the same thing. So that is another reason why all stakeholders empathize that there is a need. So the need for a digital transformation of talent acquisition suddenly got formed in about 1 or 2 weeks when the global lockdown started. And then people started to look at, okay, now what are the tools? And luckily, because we are so advanced in AI and the tool part of it, there were too many tools, and you just talked about that Speedhire earlier. So Speedhire and a lot many more tools like that. So you just had to adopt them. And I think in the last 8 months, and no one expected the lockdown to continue so long. When we started using those tools, we thought, okay, might be 3-4 weeks, and then things will resume and we'll be back to office. But then it just went on and down and down. And now we are like, okay, now we are not going to come back for the next many months, right? People have already made that, and now people are really thinking about, okay, now how do we really get the power out of these tools, because they seem to be really better than what we were able to achieve earlier, right? And suddenly all of these realizations have happened. This is, I think it's a true transformation that has happened in from April to now, and it's actually going to continue and make it stronger. And I think it's all happened for the good. So the traditional recruitment has got better. All of the positives that happen, the evaluations will get better. It will become more better evaluated, and all of that is my feel about this.
Great. Jagat, we would like to know from you, from the market perspective, that what things have changed in the recruitment process.
Yeah. So, so when the lockdown hit, what we could see was that people had business continuity in focus. So recruitment went down. However, over a period of time, people got normalized to the new norms, and then even for the existing clients that we had, they came up with a lot of feature requests because they started using the tool more exhaustively. And then every client had a different kind of request which was specific to them. So as Brijesh quite rightly said, the adoption of these tools have gone up. We have seen a lot of queries on our corporate care from clients looking for such kind of tools. So we gave a lot of demos, and the adoption in the market for these kind of tools have gone up. Uh, it has helped the recruitment process because it's a tool-based evaluation, so it's more objective, it's more standardized. That's what at least we have been telling to a lot of sponsors. But now, since companies have to adopt to these to our kind of tool, the Speedhire kind of tools, the adoption is much higher, the engagement is much higher. people are using it more exhaustively. In fact, we can see the number of tests have gone up. So earlier this is the campus season, right? So earlier people would go to the campus and they would have the whole campus drive in the campus. This year we see that the campus volumes are high because uh, the students are at home, they are attending Zoom classes. However, the recruitment is going on, so the campus drives are also happening through the tools. And then there are a lot of requests on how do you maintain sanity of the test, in terms of is it the same person who's given the test, whether they are faking it, whether they are using unfair methods to boost up their score. So those are queries which are coming from a lot of clients who are adopting it for the first time. Yeah.
Right. So, these requirements, these, particular requirements of tech talent that we are looking at brings me to another question that I have for everyone is, what are the core competencies that you as HR leaders look for while recruiting a tech talent or a software engineer for that matter? Rajesh, can we start with this question? The answers from you.
Okay. So I'll make it short, and talk for two kinds of talents, right? Because we'll have people that are fresh out of college, and people who are already in the job in the particular field. So I would think that for a fresh out of college, because the basic degree is what they have, we don't really expect them to be a master of any specific thing. But what we will look for is their analytic and logical ability, and the whole approach of what's their attitude, what is their adaptability, and what is their learnability. So to me, the whole attitude, adaptability, and learnability is extremely important, especially in a tech field, be it either on hardware side or on the software side. The world that we live in, the changes happen almost every 2 to 3 years. So in fact, the entire tech stream cycle that we call it today is about 2 to 3 years. In 2 to 3 years, the entire gamut of tools and languages and technology will undergo a change. So you can't really believe that you're going to spend another 10 years in that field. So every 2 to 3 years, you have to refresh, reskill, upscale, and that's the skill that we look for as a fresher. Now, when we are hiring on a lateral talent from the market, it becomes really important that the deep tech knowledge is there in that individual, and it could be on whatever that field of the chosen field is, because as we get more and more into technology driving industries, I just talked about few examples of how banking, insurance, retail, now HR, and all of them will drive the business. Technology or IT or the software is no more a backend for a nice to have things. It is actually the one that is powering business. So when you have technology that is powering business, you have to be really good at the technology of what you do. So um, it's really important for people who are not a fresher but who's on the lateral hire to be making sure that they are really a good expert in one technology. So the deep knowledge of technology is very important, because the jack of all is less preferred and master of one is surely preferred for a lateral talent. And then of course you really want that person to come in and give a technical leadership. So beyond the other skills, which again it's easy to guess, I would think that the in this kind of um, phase of technology powering business for the next couple of years, these are the two things for a fresher and for a lateral that makes sense.
Great, great. Steve, can we have some insights from you that what in terms of, the qualities, the skill sets that you look at while you're hiring people, tech talent at Unisys?
No, I think a lot to what Brijesh already alluded to. I think it's critical. So A couple of things. The way we look at it, I think the tech knowledge, like anywhere else, is critical from a perspective of what they know, what is the specialization that they come from when we're talking about specifically lateral hires. And I think the context of the learnability and the ability to unlearn, because I mean you can get stuck with one tech like Vijesh called out, but if you're not able to unlearn that and get onto something new, that's going to be a challenge. Uh, the other thing I think is the ability to problem solve, and that becomes critical again across multiple tech or domains, and that becomes again very critical from a perspective. Uh, to top it on, there, I think there is a significant amount of at times customer interface managing the ability to front end with the customer or articulate a solution for him or understand his problem. Those are critical soft skills that are needed in roles which have customer interface. For roles which are tech, I think that tech knowledge. Uh, we also assess the ability to of our assessment just to make sure that people, because to Brijesh's point, if tech is going to drive everything business, then it is important to have those experts who understand the nuts and bolts as we move forward. So assessing aspects of those skills and experience and applicability of that skill, because I think what we find also is a lot of people call out a lot of skills, but when you come down to applicability of what they know and what they can deliver on, it's a different story. So, and I think all of us have seen that. I think if we were to look at college grads or what is it that we're kind of looking at, I think it's primarily the curiosity, the problem solving skills, aptitude, fundamentals in place. What you've learned in your engineering or your degree, you're able to showcase the applicability of some of that and showcase what you are, you know, what you've done. And I think a lot to do is also around the initiative that you take at that stage. So there are groups of students who do projects, there are groups of students who try out something new, and it makes it's an important aspect as far as we are concerned when we are looking at talent from our perspective. And I think this cuts across. I mean, so if you look at whether you look at India or China or you look at Australia, I think those are things which become critical. I think the context, the cultural nuances definitely play into that in terms of what is a given in India is not a given in, let's say, China or Australia. But I think the core fundamentals are absolutely the same. Your ability vis-a-vis the skill, your ability to deliver vis-a-vis your attitude and soft skills to engage with people. I think those are absolutely core to us in terms of how we go about it. And of course, we use, to Murli's point, all of us do use various assessment tools and have been using that for some time. But the way we look at it, I would rather call it as an assisted decision making rather than heavily dependent on this thing, because there are flip side to the technology too. And then I think as AI matures, to Brijesh's point, some of that assessment will evolve. But till then, I think you have to have a mix of both, where the technology assesses you in making decision. Because fundamentally, the way we look at it is all of us are human and all of us have a preference. So when you say it is, I'm not biased, I will be biased, whether I'm a hiring manager or whatever. And the biases, are really dug up from who I am and what I have been successful at. So, if I'm a great coder and I'm a great problem solver, but I'm not a great team people, then tend to hire people around that set. And so I think as we evolve, it is important to understand that when we are creating tech in terms of assessment of this thing, it is somebody's bias which is going in. And so I'm hoping that over a period of time, AI is able to negate those, and it's going to take some time. It's not that. Okay, so I think that assessment, that ability of a hiring manager becomes very critical to say, this is something, or this individual or talent will work for me. Thanks.
Great insights, Sudev. Murli, we would want to know things from Murli. What are the strategies, and how are you working in Qualcomm in terms of looking for the right tech talent? How do you decide?
Yeah, so couldn't agree more with Sudev and Brijesh, honestly. I think uh, there's a slight difference on how Qualcomm looks at some of these talent, right? Um, rightly so, right? For example, we have the entry level talent, which most likely we go to the colleges and pick the best possible students. We have this regular assessments that are done for them. For there, it's technically we're not going to assess them their ability on say a particular area or anything because all that we are trying to know is do they have the good problem solving skills? Have they shown any ability to learn some of those things and can independently work and learn from people? So those are some of the parameters that we normally check. Uh, it's very difficult to kind of pick the best talent at entry level because it's kind of stereotyped in some sense. In every they also know what kind of questions are going to come, what will help them, and they are coached to a certain very good extent. And these are not normal people; they are very talented. The top ranks in IIT JEE, so they are well prepared for a scenario. I think what happens is more than ability. I think we need to look for what are they looking for. Will they learn things that we are trying to hire for? But when it comes to experienced people, there is a slight difference that we see as a company. In my view, it's also some kind of fresh grad hiring, experience back, and it also why I'm saying this, right? Because most of the time, the tech that we are working on is not really available. In the sense, for example, uh, we are all hearing and talking about 5G in the last 2 3 years, but we've been working on this for the last 6 7 years. But when we hired somebody, we technically didn't hire a 5G engineer because they were not available anywhere. So what we're trying to do in such scenarios is actually to look for somebody has a good uh, technical knowledge on the areas that they worked on to know are they able to solve problems? Can they articulate a problem statement into actionable solutions that can be delivered? If some of those signs are seen, then we take a bet, honestly, on candidates saying, okay, we can bring him and probably get him to work on new technologies and probably groom people. And once the technology becomes a little more wider available, then we actually go hire same talent, same technology areas. So some of the hirings that we did, we are doing, continue to do, are things that are people who have not worked on. There is some learnability that is required, and also one thing that we keep in mind though is they have to rub shoulders with the best of the people in the industry. So I think that's one of the criteria that we bring is, hey, we need to find people who can learn and challenge the existing people too. So we look at those parameters when we look at people, and also it's slightly different from a hardware standpoint. Software is whatever I told till now. From a hardware standpoint, these are passionate people. These are the people that have chosen circuit branches. They want to be in circuits, and they kind of have the lenience to working on a certain area. There, the difference will be: can we challenge them? Can we provide them opportunities which can help them to do well in the organization, and also work on areas that are not explored. So again, it goes into the same mode of problem solving for future and those kind of things. So yeah, so these are the areas where we definitely look at, and these are the practices. So hence, we have tailored approaches for each of the skills that we hire.
Okay. So, Sudeep, you talked about the technical hiring and assessment process being biased. So, I would like to know that how do you ensure that the entire process is fair and unbiased for that matter? How do you ensure being the HR leader in your organization?
So, Sukriti, I think the reality of the situation is that biases are there, and I think it's been the longest time ever that biases have been there. I think if you make the process, and so specifically at Unisys, it's the expectation that you set in terms of what you're looking for, and well, I may want to say, hey, we hire based meritocracy, and that is again a bias. So any preference that you call out is a bias. But I think what you have to do is a rule set, saying that, hey, this is the kind of person we are looking at. What we do is call out some of those behaviors. There's a constant kind of training that happens. So whether it is diversity, whether it is specific kind of talent or specific institutes that you want to go to, or there are hiring managers who will say that I want to hire from X institute. The question is why, and so you have to. It's a constant mix of educating hiring managers, helping them be aware of certain biases. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. Biases are not necessarily all bad. Some of them are pretty good, bias for performance, etc. But I think when you are building or acquiring a large team, or hiring in large numbers, it plays a significant role. And it, according to me, is while you use tech for assessment, while you use tech for assessing candidates, you also have to be real in saying that, hey, that there are tools out there which will promise AI, but you run them through and then you're like surprised why person X didn't make it and why did person Y. So I think it has to be rooted in a lot of behavioral science, and it has to be rooted in behaviors and maths, so to say, to assess and model it out. And that is what I would expect to see as we go into this journey further, to say that, hey, this is an algorithm or this is a model which works. Ultimately what you're doing. So this is a classic thing that, can you recreate a recruiter? And if you recreate a recruiter, you recreate him with his biases from an automation perspective, or what you feed into the system, right? And similarly, if you look at it on the other side, I mean, if you're talking about resumes, right? You are limited by your resume, if I may say so. I mean, if a resume calls out X, and we've seen that all through my career, I've seen that when, how candidates call out everything possible on the resume, and you run that through an automation, this thing, and it'll start picking it up. The reason is that it's based on a certain logic, and the logic is that keywords, this thing, so you start picking it up, or your logic is that you look at the projects and those are the keywords that you pick up. So I think what I'm trying to say is that I think we have to be cautious in terms of how we evolve this, or how does this get evolved from a strictly a perspective of how ethical it is. I mean, are you giving a person an opportunity who doesn't deserve it, vis-a-vis a person who deserves it? And those are qualitative questions to be answering on a constant time. So we question ourselves in Unisys that, is this is the process, will it stand that test? And if it does, it's great. Because while we look at it from this side, I think on the candidate side, it's even more challenging today than it was about 20 years back when I started off my career to land a job. I mean, so I think the digitization has been fantastic. To I used to see bundles of resumes, print it out over the weekend and go through them. One ad you gave in a send, it would throw up 50,000 resumes, but to a point where I think it's become very focused. But in the context of making it even more focused, my only worry is over a period of time that we should lose that context of human evaluation, in the context saying that, hey, this is how it happens, this is how it is, everybody has their context, and this is how, and companies will be always different. I mean, the way Murli or Qualcomm does it will be very different from the way we do it, because it's the difference in the businesses as well as the talent that we hire. So I think those are some of the elements that we always challenge ourselves with on a constant basis.
This again, I'm really curious to know this, that how do you say, I mean, we talked about the qualitative, analysis of a candidate maybe. How do we actually quantify that? How do you know that, a particular candidate knows this much?
So I think, yes, you can know that from an automated process, and some saying that he answered 50 questions right, and that, according to me, is great. But I think beyond that 50 questions, when you ask him specific questions, if you're looking for a skill, right? Those questions, or that assessment becomes an input to a larger discussion to probe him around areas, to help him understand the problem. To as they say, you operate from his strength and then go to test areas which are he's not very familiar with, and then you try to see. So there are things like his ability to answer that, but also the character of an individual. Can he say, I don't know, I'm limited, but I can pick this up, or to the context, no, I know, but cannot answer questions. That's also a lot telling kind of a thing. So all I'm saying is that yes, black and white is great, but it is all assisted decision making. It is an input to a decision to hire a person when you probe for further. At the end of the day, you want to know what's the story. What's that individual story? What has he done different? How has he solved different problems? How has he stood in front of customers, given different perspectives? And that today for me makes the hiring decision. It's not necessarily that you give an assessment and say, okay, 50 and above, we take everybody. It's more complex. All I'm trying to say is it's much more complex, much more human in terms of this thing. But it's great that we've started looking at automation because some of this is really assisted decision making, which is kind of awesome. But I think that's a great question, Sukriti. I don't know whether I answered it fully, but still a lot of unknowns out there.
Absolutely, and this can be subjective, I'm sure, and would vary according to our strategies and processes that we follow. Uh, Brijesh, I would like to understand from you that what process do you follow, and how fair it has been for you to hire the right fit that you think he or she is.
Yeah, so the kind of bias, the kind of they are very time sensitive, as in they as everyone say, change is the only constant. They also keep changing, right? So you can't define a Bible and say that, well, these are the biases, and if you handle this, they're taken care, because the market that we deal with, the especially the more and more exposure on international scale that a lot of the people have to deal with, right? Because earlier people were dealing just with a local one country kind of thing, but today it's much more than that. So you have to be sensitive of a lot of biases. There are legal compliance on the bias part as well, and it becomes very important for both the recruiter and the panelists to be aware. So realizing that there is a hard bias that's there in humans is the first step towards trying to trying to reduce it, trying to avoid it, right? And then of course you can have a lot of tools and processes that will help you reduce this or help you aid to make better informed decisions. You have a lot of analytic tools, you have a lot of AI powered engines that will help you. But I think over dependence on them as well is not the right thing to do, because it will always have to be a mix of tools, technology with the human wisdom that has to play a very, very continuous role. So it is to first, I would think that it is to realize that there is always a possibility of bias. And once you realize and understand that that is possible, then making the recruiters and the panelists and everyone uh, take those informed decisions, making that for the betterment of the company and for the betterment of their own department or their own project or program or anything, it is important to spend the right kind of time to select the candidates, avoiding these things. So of course technology tools and everything will help you, but then you can always override for the wrong reason as well. So it's important that the realization comes in. Um, and I would say that I know I might oversell on technology, but because of my background, but I will say that the tools and technologies have only progressed in the right way, because the whole way, because the amount of data that is available, the amount of analytics that you can do on that data, the power of analytics is only exponentially grown. So there is a huge amount of data. In fact, I don't know, but we've all known that just by looking at someone's Facebook like, and if you follow about 50 or 60 likes of a person, you can actually completely infer the character of that person, right? So there are a lot of digital footprint available of each individual, and there are a lot of analytics and inferences that can happen. So people also will have to be aware of this, right? Every candidate that it's not possible to hide anything. Everything is available out there. You can be evaluated in a lot many more ways than how evaluations are possible using the technology and the tools that are available now. So I think it's always going to be a right mix of technology and tools and processes, along with the very informed human decision making that can help the buyers part of it.
So, rightly said, Brijesh. I completely agree with you onto these pointers that we have to create a right balance, and particularly when we envision that yes, there are biases that can be involved, we have to make more decisions. Jagat, I would like to know from you, from the industry perspective, that ensuring a fair technical assessment, how is that possible, and what is the status right now and the trends right now in the industry?
Yeah, as Sudep and Brijesh rightly said, uh, there is a lot of technology adoption, but just because somebody has scored 100 out of 100 in a technical test, he's not getting he would not get an offer letter directly. There would be a person who'd still evaluate him. There are two parts to it that we have seen from the industry. One is the technical assessment bit, the other is the soft skill bit. And when a person is taking an interview, he's evaluating both. So when a line manager is taking an interview, he's not just evaluating the person on his technical skills, he's also evaluating whether this is a person who has the kind of persona that I would want in my team. The technical bit is something which can be standardized. So uh, we have seen companies open to colleges that they were not earlier open to, because somebody had scored higher on it on a technical assessment that they did. And the tier 1 colleges, there's a certain benchmark that the tier 1 students uh, had, and there were outliers from tier 2 colleges who did well on the same benchmark. So there were people who were technically as competent as someone from a tier 1 college. The reason why companies go to a tier 1 college is because the hit rate there is much higher. You interview 10 people, you'll end up hiring 5 people. If you go to a tier 2 college, maybe you interview 100 people, you'd still get someone, but the effort there is much higher. So the technical assessment bit is something that I see can be standardized, that I see can reduce many of these biases, because when a person is taking interviews, he comes with his own set of experience which have built those biases and those perceptions, right? I have a perception that people from certain colleges, certain companies, certain kind of background are good, and with that lens I'm taking the interview. When I'm doing a technical assessment, it's standardized. There are a set of questions. Everyone goes through the same set of questions. There's a stack ranking for everyone. So it's an objective method of evaluating if someone is technically more competent than someone else. What we're trying to do is reducing the type 2 errors. So people, the false negatives, right? People, it's a method of having a pool of people who can then be interviewed. So somebody would still evaluate whether he's a right fit or not. On the soft skill side, we do have tools which would give you the kind of persona a certain person is, and whether that kind of persona fits into a certain role that I have in my company. Uh, these are tools that people use when they are hiring at scale, when they would want to have people go through a filtering mechanism before they can have their line manager do their round of interviews. So when you're looking at a CV and going through that process in which the line manager is interviewing, you have a certain conversion rate. What we have seen is that when people go through the technical bit, at least the people who get to the line managers are technically strong. Then the line manager evaluates them on their soft skill, whether they're fit into their teams, etc., or not. So the technical assessment bit is something that I foresee getting standardized, getting more adopted, and getting used at scale. The soft skill is something that will take some amount of time. We do have feature requests coming in which while the user is taking the test, what is the confidence level with which he is answering, what is the emotional state that the user has when he's taking the test. So these are data based analytics that companies are looking for, so that it can help them. So as Sudev rightly said, it's data driven decision support, right? It is something which will help them take a decision. It's not something which will do the decisioning. So a lot of the technologies and platforms that we have, they will for some time stay as decision support mechanisms. We are still very far away from the stage in which they will get to a decision making point in which you would say these are the five people, and then there would be an offer letter given to the five people. So it's still a lot away from that. Yeah.
Right. Murli, what do you think about this whole process of objectivity and standardization for technical assessment platforms? How true it is, and how do you want to follow it?
Yeah. So having seen this over a period of 15 years, it has changed to a certain level. Uh, I've started with a paper and a pencil test scenario. I've done like maybe thousands of tests over a period of time. So one thing that really depends is it's also not really about only objectively looking at the test paper. Sometimes it is also the right person at the right time for the right team. Sometimes it plays a huge role. What I've done over years of experience that in my initial career was, irrespective of the teams that are hiring, irrespective of the need that we have, I've done like tests for a bunch of people. One thing that I normally don't do is don't look at the resume first of all, because it's very misleading and deceiving. And hence, the reason why you want a test paper is to just ensure there is some level of opportunity given to people, and assess them based on that, and also don't give the answer sheet back to the person who's actually interviewing, because then they'll go back and say you answered 14th question, what about the 15th question, what is the issue there, why you're not able to. And I've had managers who come back to me and said, hey, can you tell me if he has answered 22nd and 24th question correct, then I would like to talk to him. So and if you give them a little more opportunity like this, then actually it becomes a little more difficult for people. Then they're trying to typecast and trying to find people like them, and that's going to be an issue. So what it really depends on the person who's actually mediating and moderating this to have some sense of keeping this away, right? For example, I've never shared a question paper with the interviewer just to give him an opportunity to go look at it and then start the questioning based on that. Also, some of these things you need to push others. They're not going to listen to you. They're going to push you to say, "Hey, I would like to see." But if you trust in your system, if you trust your test paper is good, then we should open to any school, any college, any level of students if they are very good. And I'm of a firm believer for it is not just entry level talent. And I think if it is a programming test, I've had experiences where I've given a test paper to a 15-year guy who said he's a manager but still hands on. I don't really worry about it. I actually give them a paper master to work on. I'm saying uh, I think that's my view. It is actually good thing getting the test done for people. It brings in some level of standardization for people. What we miss is in this whole process is after that people make some judgments based on certain things that they've done in the test. Um, Sometimes there are papers that where you give a paper, they'll have to work on it half, and then the rest of the half they need to work with the interviewer, saying, "Hey, how do you optimize this code, and how do you work on it?" Some of those things I have not seen to be of great use in the scenario that I've worked on. So I think from an overall standpoint, it actually helps to filter the right set of people and don't make the judgments based on the resume. Bring people on, give them additional benefit of doubt to people, and get the tests done. And there are places that can fit into the organization. That assessment, where I think as a recruiter or the manager, staffing leader, to make those calls and see where will they fit and how we can ask them to work with managers and enable that to happen. I think some of those experiences are really useful. Right now, things have changed. Right now, you can technically see if the person is, how is he doing, what is the rate at which he's answering a certain question. Is he fast? Is he thinking over? There are assessments where they will tell you this person has taken a break like 3 times in answering these questions. and there were some suspicious activities and those kind of things. I don't know how effective they are, to be precise, but some of the advancements are good, but the base data for that algorithm to work, or for that matter, is not really there. Because if you put in all the inputs that you have, it is a biased data that is going into the system. Like also they've said, if you give them a bunch of resumes saying these are the successful resumes that Qualcomm has seen, so go get me similar resumes, but it's again a biased view, because we have given a certain biased set of data points, and then we are assessing based on that. I think for that objectivity to come, I think we need to break a little more and get people to think there is going to be a bias. How can we reduce it? How can we be open about things, and how can we look at slightly diverse talent to look at solving some of the issues? I think that is going to be the challenge, and I think the companies that have figured out these areas will be very, very successful in the years to come, because it is not going to be a straight fit solution for everybody. I think that's my view. I don't know what Sudev thinks of this.
So, interestingly, this entire balance that we are trying to create, while we work remotely, this still remains a challenge for all of us to actually maintain this balance, have a technical assessment, fair technical assessment, I should say, and at the same time, give that human touch and understanding of human to human before we recruit anyone. Which actually brings me to the next question that I have for you, that a thorough assessment of a software developer generally involves multiple tests. So, how do you manage to ensure that the quality of the assessment is not compromised? And how do you ensure the accuracy of the skills in a candidate? So, I would like to start with Sudev.
So Kriti, I think, and having been long enough, and I think Murli called out some pretty interesting points out there. Uh, I think it is robust. The methodology is robust. Now, whether it is automated, whether you use intelligence around it, to get to a point, like Modi said, to say that, okay, now we have a level playing field of, we've shortlisted about 8 or 10 candidates and they are at a level. I mean, that it alludes to that. Now, it also alludes to your thinking process, which is like, okay, so, whether you have the how did you solve the problem? Was it the lines of code? Whether was it efficient code? Was it, you know, what are we looking at? What are those 4 or 5 parameters for us to say those are the skills that we are looking at, and we get that from an input perspective. I think so those elements are important rather than focusing on just the scores. I think what are you getting out of the test? Is it his ability to problem solve, his ability to write efficient code, his ability to understand and solve a problem? So I think there are different dimensions. We need, from a perspective, and this is something that we as a recruiting context always have, is that what are we looking for? And I think one that has to be defined. It can't be a context that somebody just decides arbitrarily that, hey, this is great, and hence I'm going to do this test, and hence I will get this outcome. That may not necessarily be true. I think what is the role? Fundamentally, it starts with what you're looking for. Are you looking for a full stack developer? Are you looking at a cloud engineer? What is it that you're looking for? And consistently within the Unisys framework, we always ask that. I mean, basis the discussion we have as to what is it that you're looking for, because it's easy to put out a JD and then say, okay, this is what it is, and only to discover at a stage that that's not what we are looking for, right? So I think the fundamentals around what you're looking for, and you can do the assessments and say these are the 6 parameters that I'm looking for, and parameters in terms of the soft skills or whatever you may want to call it, or probe further around those areas, that these are areas that are strong. These are areas that I can complement with somebody on my team. You also don't want people who have the same skills and people who don't have the skills you want. And that, I think, to that context, the test and the tech assessments play a significant role. I mean, I wouldn't hesitate to call that out. I think where it becomes like Jagat called out, saying that it can't be the only parameter, or it is not the only parameter that you go after and say basis that you hire. I think what Murli was alluding to in the last couple of, say, like you pointed out, question number 22 means then I want to shortlist. I think that is a here and now approach. It will not build teams which you want from a longer perspective. I mean, which you want from a strategic perspective. And I think that is a discussion we keep happening, keep having with the hiring managers at Unisys is what is it fundamentally that we are looking for? Is it a 60% fit from a tech perspective, or we are looking for a 100% fit? Because that 100% fit is like a purple squirrel. You'll never find it, right? So it's about today. It's not an employer's market to the way it was about 20 years back. I mean, I could pick and choose in this thing. Today, candidates evaluate you. Candidates assess you, saying that, do I even want to get this go the test route with them? And I think those are important elements to this whole complex equation that exists in terms of hence equals a hire. But I think there are no two ways that while the landscape has changed, while the way we assess has changed, but I think it's an important aspect, this whole context of testing and tech assessment. But I think that what we are looking for and what are those parameters that I would establish, get, and then hence make a decision. Because I think that's significantly different than what used to be earlier. And it has only been assisted. I mean, gone are the days where somebody claims that, hey, I have done Java and I've done this and I can say it and I can get an offer letter, clear an interview. I think those are days. I think if you're saying X technology, then we'd like to assess you and we would want to assess you. But I think on the other side, I think it's important as hiring managers to understand what are we needing. Do we need this? Do we not need it? So I think that's where it's played a significant role. To Jagat's point and to what Brijesh was saying, that it is an important evolution to the whole process.
All right. So, Murli, I would want your inputs also here because I have a separate question for both Brijesh and Jagat to point out in terms of technicalities. So, what are your thoughts here, Murli?
I think I agree with what they were saying also. But what I've seen over a period of time is there is a change in the way candidates are thinking. I'm sure back in the days when we were doing assessments, I'm sure most of us would have heard this like thing, hey, he has more than 4 years, he'll not take a test. He's a team leader, he's not going to take a test. It's very difficult to ask a senior guy to take a test. So test is for mostly entry-level talent. That's used to be the trend. I think it took some time to break that with the candidates. It took some time to even break it with the managers. I'm saying, hey, how will you take a test? And people had two issues. One, manager was not interested in defining a test probably, and because he was actually in a hurry to just say, hey, he knows concepts and I will manage to train him. That's what the issue. And the second thing is candidates were not very comfortable because they were all used to a certain way of working in their organizations. They were not interested in taking a test and getting evaluated because it's also at some level, it is also, if they don't make it, it's also going to have an impact on how they pursue themselves over a period of time. But those things are broken right now because it's actually good from a tech industry standpoint because now people are open to get assessed. And people are also open to being criticized or like getting to know what they are able to do. And also, the shift also helped several companies to come up with solutions where people are getting trained themselves to go attend interviews. Earlier, they used to study themselves and come for interview, try to crack an interview. That day, if the things are working out well, they might just depend on the test. But in a test assessment, it's different, right? You're objectively looking at a candidate. If they're able to answer, if there is a certainty that they will have. I think today the surprises that companies see of a technically evaluated person is a lot lesser than what it used to be, say, 5-10 years back. These assessments have definitely helped us to get that basic done in the sense of at least a 60% technical ability is kind of assessed because you can call some people say it's luck. He picked and chose some answers and he was able to code. It was easy and stuff like that. But 60% of a person is evaluated. If somebody is clear that, then you can always work with that person. So there is an ability to identify. So hence, I would think the assessment is actually seen a complete change over a period of time. And also the people's ability and people's approach towards this has also changed, which is actually a good sign. And people that were initially reluctant to agree for doing a test for people, now they've also changed. I think it's actually a good sign. And some of it is because people have pushed some of these things, had data to prove that, hey, you assess this person, if this person is doing well, and nobody goes back and looks at data like that. For example, there is a correlation between the interviewer who interviewed the person to the performance. And I'm saying, again, if you bring this, then people will say, oh, that data is very skewed. We might not look at it. But if you have to go back and sit and understand, if your top performers, what is the average interview rating that they have got, or the test result they've got, there is some correlation, either positive, negative. You can do a Kutka values and find out what variable had an influence on the performance, what not. But there is definitely a possibility of finding that data. Companies don't go down that path because they're worried about the whole thing about how it will look, what will be the issue that will come out of it. So, but if we really want to do it, I think there are ways and means to get to that level of understanding to work on some of the data that is available, and also it will help organizations to decide who should be interviewed, depending on how the candidate turns out to perform. So I think some companies are doing, some companies are not doing because they're saying it's also a biased approach and stuff like that. But depending on the company need, if there's a need to have an assessment like that, I'm absolutely open to doing something like that. I think those are my views on this.
Okay, so moving to Brijesh and Jagat, I would like to know from both of you that, how are the core skills being tested in your organizations? Also, what are the range of assessments that you see that are being taken up in the market?
So, see, the kind of assessment, and again, I think Murli was talking about, there was a mind shift change required in making every job seeker, be it at whatever level, be aware of the fact that they are going to be evaluated, right? They are going to be tested rather than, and it's actually a need of almost all organizations, because if project timelines are shorter, you don't really have a program or a project that runs for 5 years, because the entire agile methodology of work that has come in have brought in two changes. One is you will have your programs to be much shorter in duration, because you've always broken them into pieces and said that you will do one at a time. That's one part of it. The other one is that the important of every individual in a team is important. So gone are the days where you would have 20 people in the team and one or two spokesmen representing the entire team, and everything else is a black box for everyone else around, right? They were all accepted norms earlier. So you could have a 20-member team wherein if you have two star performers, things were okay, right? And but today it is not that way. Today, because of the agile work, and you have daily stand-up meetings with all stakeholders across the world, uh, almost everyone is completely exposed out. So you are in a world wherein you have to be good at what you're doing, and that get tested. May not be on day one of joining, but at least the week two of joining or week three of joining, and that's all the time that any individual will get in an organization to be part of the new organization and start performing. Now that's the new reality, that's the new context, right? So, and that is why uh, the evaluations also have become more uh, it's become more important that the evaluations are done the right way, right, rather than just picking someone and giving them an unforeseen kind of time to say that, okay, you scale up at your own pace. So companies can't afford that. No company can afford that, right? Companies change their entire landscape in a couple of years, so you can't do that. So that's one the premise that is changed. And when that premise is changed, the candidates, every candidate at whatever level it is, will have to go through these multiple assessments, and it's a need of an hour. Now the assessments also has increased in the breadth and spread of it. So there is objective assessment, there is coding assessment, there is this new thing about a one-way video interview. So you actually record a video, and it's pretty. All these become very important because you don't have to block the two people at the same time. They might be at different time zones, they might be at different um, engagement of different work, but you have a one-way video interview, and you give that, and then it could be the panel video interview. And then there's the other thing about lot of things about the communication assessment, because again, as I said, that every individual in the team becomes exposed. The communication skills also become very important now. So a lot of companies do require that the communication is as important. It's important that you are able to articulate your thoughts. You need not be a master in the language. That's not the intent, but you are able to articulate your thoughts, because it's not just enough that you code, but also about articulate, and especially in this whole crunch timeline of work and all of that. So there is communication assessment. There is a lot of AI scenario based assessment, right? And which is now possible along with the psychometric assessment. So there are about, what I said, about 5 or 6 kinds of assessments that are possible. Now, this, and from a candidate side, they have to be prepared to undergo these things, and that's the new reality. There is no point in shying away from there. This is the global reality, and it's not just in India. It's actually a global reality. But from an employer side, I think along with putting down all of these things, I think the employers should also be aware that today this is as Swiggy and Zomato and Amazon kind of generation, wherein the ease of use of anything for that matter, right, is extremely important. So gone are the days where you will have unlimited patience in coping up with whatever interface you're given. Even if it is a dream job that you would have thought, if the first two interactions of being interacting with that particular company, right? And typically it will either be a recruiter, a panelist, or a platform that you're given to be evaluated. If that doesn't look okay, if that's giving you trouble, you'll actually just walk out and say that fine, I'll try another job, even though this job prospects might be high and all that. So I think it's important for companies to be able to give the entire user experience for a candidate also to be a world-class one, or at least a seamless candidate experience from the first time of engaging with a candidate until the entire onboarding process of it. So that becomes really, really important. So as a talent acquisition team, as an HR team, as a even a unit team, it is important to realize that people have too many choices now. They will walk away and do not take anything for granted. So, technology, tools, all of that is okay. But unless you empathize from the other side of things, right, and see about, you can have all of these technology powers working in the back end, right? You don't have to make it in the front end and bore the candidate or make it tedious for the candidate to undergo this experience. So that's the other important part from an employer side, saying that if you really need candidates, the ability to give a awesome, the seamless and a good candidate experience is getting more and more important, because otherwise they will walk away.
Right. So, moving to Jagat, just help us understand that how tools like Speedhire are helping us with the whole testing of skills of a candidate, and how they actually aid the entire process of technical hiring and recruitment.
Sukriti, from the kind of assessment that we have seen on the platform, bulk of it is around core skills and coding. So Speedhire supports 54 languages. The top 5 or top 10 are the ones which are most popular. Also, the questions, the quality of the paper is decided by the quality of questions. So we have about 15,000 questions on the platform, and companies are and we give all kind of analytics along with those 15,000 questions. But companies are very particular about what questions they use for their tests, because the perception a candidate has about your company will also be from the quality of test that he's given. So if he likes the problem that he is solving, he would carry a certain perception. If he finds it too easy, too difficult, he'll have a separate perception of it. Uh, there's a lot of focus on problem solving. So if we look at the coding problems that we have in our library, they focus a lot on problem solving. So we have a set of companies who would not, would want to focus on whether a person has a basic understanding of the language and whether he can solve the problem. So they would still want to ask, why don't you find the factorial of 10, or why don't you create a linked list? So they are very academic in terms of the questions that they would want to ask. And then there are companies who want to test people on their problem solving skills. So the questions that they choose depend on what the outcome that they want to get out of the assessment. So there are companies who would want to test people on their problem solving skills. So when you pick a question from the library, it's not very direct, that why don't you do a factorial, or why don't you uh, use this particular dynamic programming algorithm. It doesn't tell you what to do. So as a candidate, you have to understand the problem, figure out what needs to be done, write the piece of code. And there are companies who are looking for the 1 percentile programmers. So those will go a step ahead, and they'll say, okay, these are people who can solve the problem, but can they write optimized code and still solve the problem? There are others who would say, okay, these are people who can solve the problem. They can also write optimized code, but can they write the code in a way such that there is low technical debt? So the code is modularized. So people ask for those, companies ask for those kind of metrics. So what dimension the company is looking for decides what questions they are going to choose. The questions will decide the quality of the assessments that they are doing. And as Brijesh rightly said, the candidates are evaluating you in terms of the tests that they are taking. So we speak to a lot of candidates on their experience with different tests, and they come back and say, oh, this was very easy, or this was very difficult. So the perception of the company depends on how much fun the candidate had in taking the test. So they might score a 0, it doesn't matter, but if they liked solving the problem, they'll go back and carry a certain perception of your company. So bulk of the assessments are still coding and core skills using MCQs, because as we discussed earlier, people are still treating this as a decision supporting mechanism. So they want to find out the strength and weak areas of the candidate, whether this candidate is good at coding, what are the skills that he is good at, which will come from the analytics that you get from the MCQ scores. But in the last 1.5 quarter, what we have also seen is people looking for role-based assessment. So they are looking for data scientists, but they don't want the data scientist to be good only at Python or Scala from a programming standpoint. They want the data scientist to be able to solve data science problems, and they want the platform to support it. They want things like a React developer. So they don't want the React developer to be tested academically on his React skills through MCQs. They want the person to build a project on a platform, and that could be then assessed by an evaluator. Uh, so people are asking for project kind of platform support, in which you would give them a problem, the candidate would still come on our platform, solve it, build a small application using any of the frameworks. It could be React, Node, Angular. So those are things that we support. Data science, they could kind of build a model, and then the evaluator is then going to evaluate it. He would still need to look at the app, but he's not looking at the MCQ score. He's looking at what is the app which has been built. So the basic core skill of React, Angular, data science, those are used. Those have been used to build that application. People are not just happy with, okay, this guy has code 80 out of 100 in React MCQ, so he must be good at React MCQs. So that's where the industry is at least migrating, and people are adopting more of those things. Then there is role based question. So you would want to evaluate how a person is thinking uh, uh, in a certain scenario. The role based questions are typically done using subjective kind of questions, in which you would want to give them a small caselet, and they could create a Word doc or a presentation. So those get uploaded on the platform, and then somebody will have to download, look at it, and give marks to it. Uh, those are also getting popular, in which you give a certain scenario. The person has to think through, come up with an original solution to it. So every person will have a different solution to it, and those get evaluated by the evaluator, and he gets marks, and he's given marks for it. Uh, so these are the different assessment from a volume perspective, at least that we see on the platform, and from a requirement perspective that we get from our interaction with many of our clients.
Uh, Jagat,
Okay,
just
so it's basically,
sorry, Sukriti, I just wanted to make a
yes.
point. I think,
No, please, please.
uh, Jagat, I think that is a very interesting perspective you kept, because that if candidates like a problem, they are pretty okay with, there's a perception they walk out about the company, and we see that we run this student innovation contest, and we've been running that for the last couple of years. It's about 12 odd years, and where they are coached, etc., they're mentored over a period of time, and then they present these projects and around specific problems that have been defined. And we have found that from a hiring perspective, guys who either liked the problem or who have created some awesome solution, or even folks who like the problem did not make it in the as finalists, have walk off with a strong perception about the brand and the kind of work that you do. And I think, to your point, I think that's a very important takeaway as to what is it that you're keeping in front of that candidate, because it's every touch point then becomes, even to what Brijesh alluded to, is a moment of truth. So either it's a, I like it, love this company, or I know they're doing interesting stuff, or it's kind of a switch off, saying that it's either too tough or not very interested. And I think that's a very important point. Thanks. Sorry, Sukriti, go ahead.
No, no, that's completely fine. Also, what I think is, when you were going to evaluate a candidate on the perspective of recruitment, and at the same time, now with this, the candidate will also evaluate what you have, right, as an organization, what you have to offer. And interestingly, if the questions are very much exciting, and if the candidate finds it super easy, or maybe super interesting as per his idea or her ideas, I guess you will always get a better solution, right, in terms of the response or the answers that he or she, or maybe a model that he or she is trying to build. I think that also creates the impression out of what he or she is creating. So wonderful takeaway, Jagat. I should actually thank you for this. Thank you so much for giving us this. And I will move to the last question that I have for everyone today, which is, how do you plan to strategically move ahead with the process of technical assessment and hiring? So I should get back to Brijesh, and then I'll go to Murli for this.
Yeah. So the way forward is getting more and more. Jagat said about this platform gives about 45 or 50 language assessments. So the entire ability to do technology assessments, right? So the technologies keep evolving. The touch points of what you want to evaluate change, and if you really need to cover technology evaluation, you really have to break down into. So you will be hiring in multiple roles. You will be hiring in multiple years of experience, um, and to be able to give the point about n is equal to 1, right? Which is every unique candidate, if they can be actually be considered separately, right? Which essentially means that you are able to have a technical evaluation by feeding in, saying that this is what I want to have this candidate for this role, right? And then you have a very interactive assessment mechanism by looking at the candidate. If the questionnaire can be changed on the go, right? And able to do that kind of assessment. So rather than making this a very static assessment, um, uh, having the ability, so use AI, use the final outcome of what you really want to achieve, and then have your entire technology assessments to be very dynamic based on the candidate. So it will have a same starting point, but then the path that they take, each candidate takes, will be different. Now, this is the way forward, and the more and more you are able to take these paths, bring out more about the candidate, and not not to have any fixed routine of it, and then the candidate also finds it interesting, right? And at the end of the day, the outcome of what you assess is going to be much more comprehensive, and the decisions that you can, and again, assessment is only a part of evaluating a candidate. You take the output of this assessment, and then you look at, okay, how did this go? But if you have a very dynamic, progressive, and um, AI and other technology powered assessment possible across the technologies, right? And which will keep adding up. End of the day, you're going to have a much powerful and a much more comprehensive report for the panelists and for the recruiters to decide on whether the candidate is right fit for the job, right? So that's the way forward for me. I'm also getting in at CSS, I'm also getting the engine of recruitment to add more and more of these components, and it is actually getting more components added into the assessment framework. Uh, get it stronger, give better, better outcomes through which more informed decisions can be taken.
Right. Thank you so much. Murli,
Yeah, I kind of
how
agree
does
with
the
what.
road ahead look?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
So
please go ahead.
I think it is slightly crowded right now. I think everybody's trying to do things that are good from a system standpoint. For example, there are companies which had solutions which other companies were not interested in using, but some of them are now useful. When somebody came and said, "Hey, this tool will tell you if there is a suspicious act by a student while taking a test," last year I would have said, "Hey, I'm not interested at all. Why don't we have this? We don't need this because we're doing this in college. There are six people from Qualcomm standing in the floor where the test is happening. But today it's different, right? Today the assessments have gone back home. In the sense, you can take your assessment wherever you are. Uh, that I think is going to evolve further. People will have an option to take what kind of assessment they like and at the pace that they want to take it. And also, uh, companies also will get closer to reality in terms of uh, I think there is a understanding that people have is I need to make it very very difficult assessment for people. And the moment you go to a technical guy, the first thing that they'll say is, "I'll set up a question paper. It's really difficult for us to for anybody to crack. If they get half of it, we'll take him." That kind of a scenario that's going to go away. Meaning, I'm saying that's actually kind of changing for a period of time. I think it'll get closer to reality. It's also because you can give the most difficult problem to solve for them, but if you don't have similar problems in your company to solve, then what are you getting this person to do? You're just generally trying to make it difficult. Some companies have been successful. They've actually created a process where it is very aspirational to get into those companies by creating these difficult problems. Okay, it's very difficult to crack an exam in this company. So it becomes aspirational for people. But I think now it's going to get like a little more real in the sense what is required for your job. That's where I agree with Jagat is saying, hey, can you do a role-based assessment? So what is required for this particular role? Do they have the basics covered? And I think those things are going to come into play going forward. And it is also going to get to a mode where yeah, because I came from a background where I learned programming by force, where the school that I went to, it is mandatory for the person who's teaching you to clear the exam before they can give the test to you. I think at some level, the companies will now move into a mode where the teams also will have to go through the similar test to get a feel for where do we land some people. I think I'm thinking it might look a little biased today, but I think it's something that I'm thinking that it might happen in the near future. And one final thing that's something that I'm thinking is it'll get more scenario based testing, more than finding the best answer possible, and probably some kind of gamification and stuff like that. So to see how people react to situations, and those kind of assessments are going to become uh, more used in the years to come. And I think I had these are the things that are going to happen. But I just had one question for Brijesh. So if you're creating a path for a candidate to go through, again, are you not restricted by, say, if there are 10 questions, let's say, so the first question has three options. So are you not constrained by, based on what answer he picks, the path is determined? But again, that will also lead to some level of bias, right? So just wanted to hear your view on that, Brijesh.
So this is that adaptability test, right? So the typical GMAT kind of examinations, right? They are all adaptive in nature. So based on how to answer, but then your scorings are going to be different. So essentially, if from your first question, or let's say you answer first three questions to be right, and if you're going to be given a tougher fourth question, then that fourth question is going, and if you're really able to solve it, that fourth weightage for that is going to be much higher than if you have answered, let's say, two out of the three wrong. And if you're given a fourth question and if you answer that right, that will be a simpler question and the weightage is going to be lower. So net, it is not that if you answer well, you're going to be taken to the tougher path. It's actually that evaluation and the weightage is going to be more as well. Now, I'm saying that these are things which are which again, I'm not saying that it's a hard and fast rule that it has to be taking this path, but making all of these options available and saying that there are roles where it has to be more adaptive in nature, and where that candidate hiring of n is equal to 1 is more applicable, then you use these things. Because otherwise, unless you have your evaluation mechanism to be adaptive in nature, you're not going to be able to do that. You can't have a routine set of 10 questions to be asked to every candidate, because each one will differ in the way in which their background is, their technology. It could be the same technology, but their approach to technology can be different. And an adaptable tool or a process, and whichever is there, will be more able to judge that candidate, and that will be another way as we move forward. That will get more and more powered.
Okay.
All right. So Dev, can I have your inputs for the strategies that you think that you're going to adopt in the coming time, and how the future looks like? What does it look like?
Sure. So I think the couple of things before I get into that, which I want to set across in terms of the talent landscape, the way I see it. So I think at a very fundamental level, things like empathy have come into play, and it's a significant play. I mean, it's not even this thing. So at a very basic level, empathy is a big one. At the second base level, it's trust. So you can be sitting anywhere. I trust you that you will do. Earlier it was being skeptical and then building trust, but it's the other way around. If I think I can over this thing, then I think that's the second thing. The third thing is being real about things. I mean, there is an aspirational value, and then there is that context of realness, which Murli talked about. So I think those are three fundamental things that we are going to see, or we are actually seeing through this transition. You're not in those scenario where you will doubt whether if he is at home, whether he will work, whether he will. I mean, that's not today. Business is not worried about that. I think what the business wants is now saying, okay, I trust you. Let's see the output. So I think that those are the three fundamental things I see, basic fundamental things that have changed. Coming to talent, I think there's going to be scarcity like we've never seen before. And to Brijesh's point, it's about depth. What do you have which I can utilize? And most of the companies are going to go for the same thing, because the customer expectations would be around, hey, so how fast, how quickly, what's the kind of level of this thing. So I think depth is going to be, so scarcity of talent that we've never seen like before. I think that's going to happen. It's already happening. Number two is specialization, or your subject matter experts are going to be far and few between. So while it is very aspirational to say that, hey, every graduate in India will become AI specialist over this thing, it's a kind of a long-term kind of a perspective. Skilling, reskilling is going to be a significant way for companies to focus on building their inventory of skills that they want. So I think there's going to be a lot of inward focus on mobility, and we are already seeing that a lot of companies are focusing inward to look at leaders and this thing. Uh, and I think lastly, if you really, fourth aspect, if you look at it, there's going to be innovation all around. I mean, today, some of the startups who are just breaking the way they are recruiting, breaking the way, or leading the way, how they put out job descriptions. Brijesh talked about one-way interviews, right? But the context of how do I attract, it becomes so crowded, so noisy out there. How do you get attention of people on social media saying that here's a job, it's an outstanding one? Uh, those are four things that you will see from a talent landscape perspective. Now, having said that, what do you want, and how are we looking at it? I think there is internally there's this context of what does the top of my funnel look like? Where are these guys sitting? Where is the supply from? Where do I map people from? How do I manage that? So that's the whole automation piece, right? I never thought I would see, candidate management systems coming to recruitment. Now they are. I mean, you operate like a marketing and a sales professional, saying that here's the lead generation, this is the funnel, this is what I look like. I think that intelligence is going to be very critical. Guys who break that, in an application process today, candidates drop out. To Brijesh's point, it's not a great experience. It's too much. You asking me to fill out too many forms, asking me to do a lot of gymnastics on that thing, and hence I'm not interested. Now the question is, how do you? Those are leads. How do you capture that? How do I go back to them and say, hey, let me try to give you a different experience? And I think the third aspect of it, which is a critical one, is that whole assessment piece, which is hinged on the role, the kind of work you're doing. How can you excite candidates? What is it that you're doing from a perspective? How do I attract? How do I assessment? How do I assess? And am I fair in my assessment? Am I perceived to be fair? Then there is this whole black box or black hole theory, I call it. You put your resume and it's lost. How are we going to solve it from a perspective of recruitment professionals to say every candidate gets to hear from me? Yes, I get to hear an automated this thing, but I don't know how, what was my take. So I think that whole engagement piece, that whole responsive piece, because it's going to be for us as professionals, it's going to be really, really tough to now get candidate pools and candidates applying to us. So that there's going to be a significant amount of effort that has got to be made. And I think lastly, in the whole context, is the entire value chain of recruiting of this thing. How do you engage is going to be the most critical and successful. If you're successful, you're basically your engagement is good. We are all familiar with offer reneges and offer dropouts, and at a stage when you've gone through the process, you've gone through those tech assessments, but candidates did not join you. And then you were trying to figure out, hey, what was the reason for dropout? So I think those are elements which are now becoming more critical than ever before. Besides, and so it is this whole thing, that entire chain that I talked about, from the process of what is changing humanly to this thing and the automation context. I think that is going to be critical, that whole aspect, as the way we look at it. I think diversity and inclusion is an important part. How you perceive that way. This generation looks at it as a value add, as a very important context of where they work. So I think those are aspects which will play significantly as we move forward in terms of attracting talent or hiring talent for that.
Thank you. Jagat, can we have a quick, input from your end, and then we shall move to the closing remarks.
Sukriti, in my opinion, the core skill based assessments are going to stay for some time. Uh, People will not be very happy with using proxies for role based assessments. So they would want role more of role based assessments. The core skills will still stay, but if there's a specific role for which I would want to do an assessment, then I would want to test people on that particular skill, and not just on proxies by doing a coding test or a multiple choice test. There are different layers to it. uh, for some of the role based assessments, currently we do not have any method of coming up with a quantitative score. As an example, if there's an HTML developer who needs to be hired, it's an HTML page which somebody will have to look at and then give a certain score. If it's a certain Android app which needs to be built, a person has to look at that app and give a score. So the many of these role based assessments will see innovation there in terms of can we give a quantitative score to it, so that people have a way of uh, filtering candidate, at least functionally, whether the page is working, whether the Android app is working, whether the model is working, etc. Once we have quantitative scores there, we would then want to have the qualitative inputs. As an example, when we do a core skill test on coding, the score tells you whether the problem is solved. uh, if you do a static analysis on the code, it tells you whether the code which is written, that has been written properly or not. So those are things that people are looking for. One bit is the quantitative score. The next is what qualitative inputs can we get out of the submissions which have been made. The third is the data driven bit. So a lot of this has got to do with data driven decision making. So how good can I equip people to take that decision using data, because that makes the process more objective. So the industry will move towards role based assessments. They will look for some kind of objective measure to evaluate whether the submission which has been made is good or not. Once we achieve that, the industry will look for some kind of qualitative measure, whether the submission which was made, the code which has been submitted, that is modular or not. So you have the quantitative score, you have the qualitative measures, and then based on how other people have submitted, we can give analysis on how this person has done relative to other people. So these three will essentially help in your decision support. uh, the second bit where I see innovation is how well do we maintain the integrity of the test. So currently, if you look at our platform, we allow you to do the test in full screen mode. We prevent people from switching tabs. We prevent people from copying and pasting. So those kind of integrity measures are there in place. They help you minimize instances of people uh, doing a proxy, or people doing googling for the answer, etc., but they don't eliminate it. What we get constantly from the industry are innovative methods, and students are very innovative when it comes to cheating. So we get this from the industry: how do you handle this case, how do you handle that case? So that is where I see innovation, where we'll try to eliminate eliminate cheating in a remote assessment scenario, so that from an integrity perspective, the tests are taken by the candidate, and you know that, okay, from an integrity perspective they are good. The third, as Sudhir pointed out, uh, in that assessment funnel, at the different touch points, how do we give a good experience to the candidate? That is becoming very important. That has got to do with the quality of questions, the kind of feedback that we are able to give, which helps them give a better solution. So the different touch points that a candidate has to go through when they are giving the assessment, that is also very important from an engagement perspective, because even if you're not getting through, the companies would want you to have a good experience in in that process. Because if you do not have a good experience, then probably you would not accept the offer when you're giving the offer. So that's a very important criteria increasingly. So that's where I feel the industry is going towards from an assessment perspective and also from a experience perspective.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jagat. Thank you so much, Murli, Sudev, and Rajesh for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. It was indeed a power-packed session, I must say. Before we move ahead, can I have a closing remarks from all of you? Sudev, can we start from you?
Sure, sorry, I was on mute. I think the way I look at it, it's pretty interesting times for innovation in the space, which has been long overdue. I think it's an interesting time from a perspective of building that whole tech context within recruiting, within assessment, within the ability to enable candidates. Also, I think it's very important as we move forward. I mean, there are different dimensions which are going to come around. And I think one thing which this whole COVID thing has showed us is that fundamentally we are open to change. Fundamentally, we will change. It may require an event, but I never thought we would be so open to change in terms of overnight change the whole context from regular to going to video to onboarding people, automated kind of process. So I think it's a significant time for change, reset, and an opportunity for innovation. I mean, that's how I will call this as we go forward, because it's going to get tougher as we go forward to recruit talent as we move forward.
Right. Rajesh?
Yeah. So beyond everything, I think we only thought autonomous cars is what will get popular, but the rate at which HR will get transformed, I think the entire touchless experience of an HR in all functions is going to be much faster than an autonomous car because it will have more traffic regulations and country norms to fit in. But I think over in the HR domain, it's actually the company's decision, and what we need to um, the whole domain of trust and credibility to be established. So if trust and credibility can be established in a digital world, and that is where all of the effort will go in the next couple of months and quarters, because that is what has to be firmly established, that everyone feels confident of the decision that is being taken. It became an inevitable thing by a post circumstance in March and April, but people have now embraced that that's the way to move forward. So what we are going to see in this way, in this world, and it's not just on one bit of a talent recruitment. It is actually in the entire 360-degree cycle of a candidate experience. All of that are going to undergo changes with technology, changes for a more seamless way forward. And I think the next 2 years are going to be really industry defining moments, is what my take is.
Thank you. Murli, can I have a closing remarks from you as well?
Yeah, I'm going to look at two different aspects while coming up with this closing remarks. Uh, the phases, the phase at which the changes happen is unbelievably fast because of the COVID situation. In the sense, uh, we never thought we would do certain things in a way, and it would have taken like 5 to 6 years, but those things happened within the span of 3, 4 months. I think that shows that companies are willing to change. When it comes to a situation where it has to change to operate, people will adopt technology. And I think that's what I've learned in this short period of time. Second thing is, there is one general concept that people say is adoption of technology in an organization starts with tech groups, followed by finance and others. The last one to adopt this whole technology piece is actually HR. But that is kind of getting questioned now. It's actually put upside down. It starts with HR now because there are opportunities for HR to kind of be a little more adaptable to the technology. We were using here and there, but let's be honest, I think HR had the lowest technology adoption by various studies that you see, but that is actually changing, which is actually a good sign to see, because then you will be able to have that conversation that is required from an organization standpoint. The third thing I want to just say finally is the assessment itself. It is going to be a lot more easier in coming years on the assessment. Okay, I'm saying this with a lot of confidence because the assessments were done only at a entry level engineering talent, or at maybe when you have experience. What we are not realizing is in last 8-9 months that people at school, people at college, people at like even junior schools, they all got used to this technology bit. Assessments online. One of the funny things that happens at home is my son normally keeps asking, "Is it an online class or an offline class that you have today?" And they actually asked me saying, "Oh, you don't have your assessment? I finished my assessment, my answers have come in and whatnot." I think that is actually a welcome sign. In honesty, in 10 years, the assessments become mainstream, then these kids are all used to this whole thing. It is not a new thing for them. I think technology-wise, they are actually a lot more well prepared, I would think. So I think that's another change that I see as a person seeing around in the family and whatnot. So I think it is going to stay, and I think people have got used to this, and people are now thinking, oh, we can break some of the old thinking of how we operate and whatnot. And a good example is companies thought working from home one day is okay, but it's difficult. It'll bring the morale down. People will not be efficient and whatnot. But today, you don't have a choice to go to office. 5 days, the managers who said, "Hey, I'm a believer that I need to meet my team for lunch, dinner every day," those things are broken out and people are able to do. And yeah, I think some of those things, I think this is a good wake up call for people to realize that work can be done from anywhere. If you trust people, the assessments can be done from anywhere. And as long as there is a good intent and people are bringing the right things onto the table, I think there will be a lot more openness in the industry. I think those are my closing remarks on this whole assessment.
Rightly said. Thank you so much, Murli. Rightly said, Murli. Thank you so much. Jagat, can we have a closing remark from you?
Yeah, so I think COVID has accelerated the pace of innovation in this space. The good part is it is demand driven. So COVID put companies in a situation in which there was a need for a solution like this. Platforms like Speedhire addresses many of these solutions. There are still unmet needs which need to be addressed, and those needs are going to drive innovation in this space at a much accelerated rate because the adoption of the platforms have gone up. People are comfortable using the platforms. People are comfortable doing assessment on the platforms at scale and using them in their decision support mechanism. So I think these are good times uh, to be in this space, working as a product person in the space, and building solutions in the space to address many of those needs. Yeah.
Great, great. Thank you so much. So now, before we conclude the session today, let us have a look at the demo video of Speedhire to understand how it's aiding the technical recruitment processes for several organizations till date. Now, I would like to invite Ashika Sahani, Head of International Sales, TechIC and Speedhire from Times Internet for the vote of thanks.
Thanks so much, Sukriti. It was extremely a very good session. I had a lot of incredible insights that I can take away from this session. I would like to thank Mr. Das, Mr. Malu, and Mr. Balakrishnan for this power pack performance, and plus also brilliantly articulating everything. You all took real life examples here, and we could relate it. Being from the non-recruitment background, also we can relate it to exactly what you said. And plus, so my takeaway from here is going to be like while the recruitment process is shifting towards automation and digitization, at the same time, it's very important to take the candidate experience also into consideration. So obviously, all of us here who are into recruitments will be able to take that away. And I'm sure everybody would have a lot of insights to be taken away from this session. Lastly, I would take an opportunity to reach out to all the panelists and the audience members for a little demonstration of Speedhire in the future. If in case any of you want to get in touch with us, we are reachable at corporatecare@speedhire.com. Thank you everyone once again.
Thank you, Shika. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank our eminent speakers for sharing their precious and amazing contribution with us. If you would like to use Speedhire or understand the exceptional features it has, Shika and Jagat would be more than happy to take you through it. I would also like to thank the live audience for gracing us with your presence. This is just the beginning of our roundtable discussions. We are coming back with exciting India boardroom sessions on 1st and 8th December 2020 and US boardroom sessions on 11th and 15th December 2020. Do stay tuned for more information. Thank you once again. Stay safe. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.